It was a summer after my junior year of college, and I was ready for a fresh start. I've just gotten out of a tumultuous relationship with a guy named Jake. We met during my sophomore year, and things started off great. He was charming, attentive, and seemed genuinely interested in me. But over time, his behavior became increasingly possessive and controlling. After a year of constant arguments and emotional manipulation, I finally mustered up the courage to break up with him. The breakup wasn't pretty. Jake didn't take it well and made countless attempts to win me back, but I was resolute. I blocked his number, unfriended him on social media, and even told my friends not to share any information about me with him. For a while, it seemed like he got the message, and I started to move on with my life. I spent the first few weeks of summer focusing on myself. I got a part-time job at a local coffee shop, started taking yoga classes, and reconnected with old friends. Life was good again until one evening in late June. I was closing up the local shop when I noticed a familiar face standing outside. It was Jake. He was just standing there, staring through the window. My manager Tom noticed my discomfort and asked if I knew the guy. "Yeah," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "He's my ex. I think he's been following me." Tom offered to walk me to my car, and I gratefully accepted. As we stepped outside, Jake called out my name. Ignoring him, I quickened my pace, and Tom stayed by my side until I was safely in my car. The next few days were uneventful, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every time I left work, I would scan the parking lot, half expecting to see Jake lurking somewhere. One night, as I was driving home, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "I miss you. We need to talk." I felt a chill run down my spine. I knew it was Jake. I blocked the number immediately and tried to convince myself that it was just a coincidence. One more unsettling than the last. "I see, you've made new friends. They'll never understand you like I do. You look beautiful tonight. That dress really suits you." Panic set in. How did he know what I was wearing? Was he watching me right now? I started to feel like a prisoner in my own life, constantly looking over my shoulder and avoiding places where I might run into him. One evening, I decided to take a long, hot bath to try and relax. I was home alone. My parents were out of town for the weekend, and I thought a quiet evening might help calm my nerves. As I soaked in the tub, my phone buzzed again. This time, the message was a picture of my house, taken from outside. My heart pounded in my chest. I jumped out the tub, threw on a robe, and ran to the window, pulling the curtains shut. I called the police, hands shaking as I explained the situation. They arrived quickly, but after searching the property, they found no sign of Jake. They assured me they would keep an eye out on the neighborhood, but I felt far from safe. That night I barely slept. Every creak of the house, every rustle of the wind outside had me on edge. I lay awake, clenching a baseball bat, convinced that Jake would find a way to get inside. The next morning I decided to stay with a friend until my parents returned. I packed a bag and was about to leave when my phone buzzed again. This time it was a video. With the trembling hands, I pressed play. The screen showed footage of me sleeping in my bed, the camera slowly panning closer to my face. I screamed and dropped the phone. How had he gotten in my house? When had he recorded this? I ran out the house and drove straight to the police station. This time, they took my complaint more seriously. They promised to increase patrols in my neighborhood. I hope after this incident, I never see Jake again. I met Sarah during my senior year of high school. She was the new girl, having moved from a different state, and she quickly became the center of attention with her striking looks and outgoing personality. We hit it off almost immediately, and before long, we were inseparable. Sarah was intense and passionate, which was good at first, but as time went on, her intensity turned dark. Our relationship was a whirlwind. We went from being strangers to spending every moment together. At first, I enjoyed the constant attention and the feeling of being wanted, but it soon became suffocating. Sarah would get jealous if I so much talked to another girl and would constantly check my phone to see who I was texting. She started showing up unannounced at my house, my job, and even when I was hanging out with friends. Her need for control was overwhelming. By the time we graduated, I knew I had to end things. I tried to break up with her gently, but Sarah didn't take it well. She cried, begged, and even threatened to hurt herself if I left. Feeling guilty and trapped, I stayed with her through the summer, hoping things would improve, but they only got worse. Finally, as we were about to start college, I broke it off for good. For the first few weeks, I thought she had moved on. I didn't hear from her, and I started to feel a sense of relief. But then the texts began. At first, they were harmless enough, just Sarah checking in to see how I was doing. But soon, they became more frequent and intrusive. Why aren't you answering me? I know you are ignoring me. You can't hide forever. I blocked her number, but she found other ways to reach me. New phone numbers, social media accounts, even anonymous notes left on my car. It was clear she was keeping tabs on me, and the sense of being watched was unnerving. One night, I was out with some friends at a local bar. We were having a great time, laughing and catching up when I saw her. Sarah was standing across the room, watching me. Her eyes were cold and fixed on me, and a shiver ran down my spine. I tried to ignore her, but I couldn't shake the feeling of her watching me. As the night went on, I decided to leave early. I walked to my car, scanning the parking lot for any sign of her. Just as I was about to get in, I felt a hand on my shoulder. I spun around to find out Sarah was standing there, her face a mask of anger and sadness. "We need to talk," she said, her voice low and menacing. "There's nothing to talk about, Sarah. It's over. You need to move on." Her impressions hardened. She stepped closer, invading my personal space. "You don't just get to walk away from me. You promised we'd be together forever." I tried to keep my voice steady. "Sarah, you are scaring me. You need help. This isn't healthy." She grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "No one will ever love you like I do. Remember that." I pulled away from her and got in my car, locking the doors. She pounded on the windows, screaming as I drove away. I went straight to the police station and filed a restraining order. For a while, things seemed to calm down. The texts and calls stopped, and I started to feel a sense of normal returning back to my life. Months had passed, and I began dating someone new. Emily was kind and understanding, and she helped me forget the nightmare with Sarah. But just as I started to feel safe again, the notes began appearing. At first they were left in my car, then slipped into my apartment door. Each one was more disturbing than the last. "Does she know about us? I see you. I'm always watching." One night, Emily and I went out to dinner. When she excused herself to go to the restroom, a few minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was a picture of Emily, taken from behind. As she walked to the restroom, my blood ran cold. I looked around the restaurant, but saw no sign of Sarah. I called the police again, but without any concrete evidence, there was little they could do. The feeling of being watched was overwhelming. Emily was supportive, but I could tell she was getting scared too. We started talking about moving to a new city, hoping distant would make a difference. One evening, I returned home from work to find my apartment door open. My heart pounded as I cautiously stepped in. The living room was a mess, furniture overthrown, pictures shattered, and there, on the wall, written in red lipsticks, were the words, "You can't escape me." I called the police, but again, there was no sign of Sarah. They took my statement and promised to increase patrols in the area, but I knew she was still out there, lurking in the shadows. Emily and I moved to a different state a few weeks later, hoping to leave the nightmare behind. For a while, things seemed to get better. We settled into our new apartment and our life, and I started to feel like I could finally breathe again. But one night, as we were watching TV, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. Found you. The terror and helplessness washed over me again. Sarah was never going to let me go. She was obsessed, and no matter how far I ran, she would always be there, just out of sight, watching. It was the spring semester of my sophomore year in college when I met Eric. He was charismatic, funny, and seemed genuinely interested in me. We quickly became unbreakable, spending almost all our free time together. At first, it was exciting and felt like something out of a romance movie. But as the months went by, Eric's behavior started to change. His charm turned into possessiveness, and him always wanting attention became suffocating. Eric wanted to know my every move, constantly, texting, calling, and checking on me. He even showed up unannounced at my classes and study groups. His jealousy was intense, and he accused me of cheating. If I was so much as to speak to another guy, it became too much, and I knew I had to end it. The breakup was messy. Eric didn't take it well, at all. He spammed my phone with calls, texts, begging to take him back, and promised me to change. When I blocked his number, he created new ones to continue his harassment. I finally went to campus security and reported him, hoping that that would be the end of it. For a while, it seemed to work. The messages stopped, and I started to feel a sense of relief. A few weeks later, during spring break, I decided to stay on campus to catch up on some work. Most of the students had left, and the campus was quiet. One night, while I was studying in my dorm room, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. Miss me? My heart sank. I knew it was Eric. I blocked the number and tried to focus on my studies, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. That night, I had trouble sleeping. Every little noise made me jump. The next day, I tried to put the incident out of my mind. I spent the day in the library, hoping the change of scenery would help me concentrate. As I was leaving the library, I felt like someone was watching me. I glanced around, but saw no one. I headed back to my dorm. Later that evening, I was about to take a shower when my phone buzzed again. Another text from an unknown number. Nice shorts. Blue suits you. I was wearing blue shorts. My blood ran cold. How did he know what I was wearing? I felt a surge of panic and quickly locked all the doors and windows. I reported the new messages to campus security, but without really good evidence, there wasn't much they could do. That night, I barely slept. Every creak, every sound I heard had me on edge. Around midnight, I heard a noise outside my window. My room was on the second floor, so I couldn't imagine what it could be. I cautiously peeked out through the blinds and saw Eric standing there, staring at me with a sinister grin. I called the police. My hands were shaking. By the time they arrived, Eric was gone. They took my statement and assured me that they would keep an eye out, but I felt far from safe. The next day, I decided to stay with a friend who lived off campus until things settled down. The following nights were tense but uneventful. My friend tried to reassure me, saying Eric probably got the message and wouldn't bother me again. I wanted to believe her, but a part of me knew it wasn't over. On the third night, I was laying in bed. My phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. Did you really think you could hide from me? I felt a wave of dread. How did he find me? I called the police again, but they couldn't do much without knowing his location. They advised me to stay somewhere else, suggesting getting a restraining order. I decided to go home to my parents for the rest of the break. I packed my things and left. The next morning, hoping that the distance would keep me safe. The first few days were good at home, peaceful, and I started to relax. Maybe Eric had finally given up. But one night, I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing, another text from my unknown number. Nice house. I love the garden. My heart pounding in my chest. He knew where I was. How did he know where I lived? Terrified, I called the police and showed them the messages. They took it seriously this time and promised to increase the patrols around my neighborhood. For the rest of the break, I stayed inside, jumping at every sound, every shadow. The police, they never found Eric, and the messages stopped as suddenly as they had started. When I returned to campus, I was constantly on edge, always looking over my shoulders. It took months for me to feel somewhat normal again, but the memory of those texts and the chilling relaxation that Eric had been so close still haunts me. Even now, years later, sometimes I wake up in a cold sweat, convinced that I'll see him standing outside my window, watching me.